everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. Another international break is in the books. Tonight, it looks like it's just a two-man show. We've had a couple of technical issues, unfortunately, with our good friend in Hamburg, Mr. Joris. So it just looks like it's me and you again. Scott, how you doing? Did you enjoy your international break?
I did enjoy my international break. In fact, speaking of breaks, I had a literal break, which I'm still on. I had a couple of days away in the lovely Scottish island of Arran, where I was doing nothing but using the swimming pool and the steam room and the sauna, and then sitting beside the fire in the bar in the evening, catching up with some reading. So it was a pretty lovely break.
That just sounds ideal. Absolutely ideal. I think mine was just, cleaning up baby poo and baby sick, so it's not quite as relaxing. Let's crack on with this week's episode then, and round 11 in the Belgian Pro League. Yeah, some interesting results, some games that we probably don't really need to talk very much about, but let's start with Friday, where Beerschot finally won. They beat Anderlecht 2-1 at home. Westerlo lost 2-1 at home to Club Brugge. That was the only goals of Saturday, really. Circle drew 0-0 with Dender. Union drew 0-0 with Ghent to round off the Saturday. Sunday, Derby Day, Genk beat St. Truden 3-2 in the Limburg Derby. Leuven drew 1 with Antwerp. Standard Liège, they won the Walloon Derby 2-1 against Charleroi before Mechelen beat Kortrijk by 3-0. Let's start with that Beerschot game, Scott. Is this a sign of life finally in that purple side? Al Sahafi, obviously, with both goals, maybe they found the blueprint, which is sit back and let him counterattack. His first goal I thought was really nice, but it helps that Zanka is Zanka. But it's kind of ironic, isn't it? Because all the chatter while we were away was that Ryan Mason was going to be announced as head coach, and while we'd talked about David Huber becoming the head coach was a risk, Mason was just as big as a risk, in my opinion. Neither was the right candidate. They've gone with Huber, and it is slightly ironic that they then lost to the only team that hasn't won a single game all season. I'm not saying they might be regretting their decision, but this was an interesting one, wasn't it? And what are your thoughts on kind of, is this the start of a Beerschot revival, or is it just kind of flash in the pan stuff?
First of all, that result was a bit of unplanned hilarity. The joke being on Anderlecht, of course. Couldn't have had a worse start to kind of been offered the post kind of permanently, losing to the side who've comfortably been the poorest in the top flight so far this season. So poor David Huber, the kind of eggs on his face, unfortunately. Having said that, I mean, I think Anderlecht should never have lost this match, really. I mean, they created enough to at least get a draw out of it, if not win it, but failing to take their chances. I mean, David Huber was saying afterwards that they lacked aggression and intensity and some basic things which, if they had in the game, then they would have got something out of it. I remember when the two Saudi players kind of joined, I remember you saying to me and Joris, the Beerschot fans are going to be really just hoping, crossing fingers and toes, that they can turn it on and be the difference for them. Certainly Al Sahawi was in this game. I mean, the 3 days prior to this game, he played 90 minutes for Saudi Arabia against Bahrain, came back to Belgium the day before, plays this game, scores 2 goals, becomes the first Saudi player to score a brace in top flight European football, incidentally, which is quite remarkable in itself. What I will say about Beerschot is I think they kind of dug into this game and gave it a right good go, and you can't knock them for that. Anderlecht, plenty of question marks, particularly in a defensive sense. I mean, Den Donker at the back, I'm just not convinced by that. I think he's much better in the midfield. I get it's a needs must situation, but I think there's a question mark around that, from a kind of selection choice point of view as well. And when you look at the nature of the 2 Beerschot goals, particularly the second one, completely avoidable. It's a communication issue for me. A lot of luck in that break. So yeah, I mean they'll take it, and it will be a big boost to Beerschot. There's no doubt about it. I mean, looking at their fixtures coming up, they've got Kortrijk away next, which is a big game because that's winnable potentially. They've then got RFC Liège in the cup, which again is another winnable game, so good for your confidence. And then Ghent at home, so they'll be hoping it's the start of something. The question mark for me is can Al Sahafi produce this regularly now? Not necessarily, save them every week, but can he consistently produce something for them that gives them a chance in games? That's the one thing I took away from this weekend. Anderlecht just need to get this out of their system now, because they've got a couple of big games coming up. They've got Ludogorets in the Europa League, then they've got Club Brugge away at Jan Breidel before a cup game against the Bees. So a couple of big ones to get out of their system. But there were probably some stern words, I would imagine, in that away dressing room afterwards, because I was watching that thinking, this, if I was an Anderlecht fan, I would have been well frustrated with that.
Definitely, and it's kind of funny, isn't it? Because we said, like, oh yeah, if he gets the job, that Club Brugge game is going to be the big, like, first proper test, and they drop this clanger. But yeah, no, you're right. I think with the Saudi boys, like Al-Hamdi has been pretty decent in the midfield, like the central areas. He may not kind of show it as much as Al Sahafi with that kind of thing, but I think when you've got him and Verlinden up front, you've got directness, you've got dribbling, and I think that will always help if you're playing like kind of sit back. And it helps if Nick Shinton's just putting off some great saves as well. Like, he's been really, really good in between the posts, and he's getting a lot of action, which is why he moved. So he's kind of benefiting from that, that's for sure. From one goalkeeper playing well to our good friend who had another nightmare in between the sticks. Poor old Sinan Polat with another mistake. Oh, it's just, yeah, this one was bad, really, really bad. And it's just, will Timmy Simons make the change? Like, I think at some point he's just got to be like, right, this can't keep going, because if you're the other guys and the other goalkeepers there, you're kind of thinking, how bad are we if he doesn't trust us to come in? That goal was quite funny. I thought Van Acken's goal was even funnier, because he barely... It is technically will go down as a solo goal, but it probably one of the easiest solo goals he's ever done, because he kind of missed the dribble, then dropped his shoulder, and everyone just went the other way, and he tucked it in. So he'll be pretty chuffed with that. Good win for Club Brugge against a Vesto side that we know can be dangerous. But how often is it going to be a goalkeeping mistake that keeps costing this team?
Yeah, I mean, on the last episode when we were together before the international break, we were gently critical, shall we say, about poor old Sinan, and unfortunately this weekend he kind of justified our criticism. In fact, he underlined it with that liquid fingers moment. Who knows? Maybe he was listening, and maybe we've broke him. Who knows? But yeah, it kind of vindicates where we were coming from a little bit. Yeah, I mean, Club will just be delighted to get back to winning ways. Their first win in 3 in the league, so it was important that they got the 3 points, particularly coming into a big European game this week, which, as we record, is currently ongoing at the moment. They're in action in Milan. Yeah, so I mean, I think that was the most important thing, just to try and get that momentum going. It must have been very weird for Westerlo, actually, to see De Kuyper and Romeo Vermaat lining up against them. Romeo Vermaat was very good for the short period that he was on loan there under Rick de Mille. So that must have been quite odd for the home faithful to see those two both playing so well against them. I'm sure there was no hard feelings. Yeah, I think Westerlo did deserve a point, though, at the end of this. Club having the same problem ultimately that we spoke about on the last episode around their game management and just not killing games. Nicky Hyam was talking about there just been too many mistakes in the second half, particularly, and each mistake led to an opportunity for Westerlo, so they were getting into trouble with transitions and bad choices. And he did say afterwards, Nicky, and he said, look, we need to get rid of the nonchalance. It's killing them a little bit. And that's really what's been behind the dropping of points. Because as we know, that there have been big periods in games where they have dominated. And again, the first half this week, they were really very good. They were at the level that they would want to be at. And in fact, they started very, very strongly against Milan this evening as well. So, yeah, I mean, a positive from Club to go there despite the mistakes and the frustrating thing, and to come away with the win to take them into the European game tonight. From Westerlo's point of view, I think it's probably worth highlighting only one win in their last 8 now. after a brilliant start. The positive, if there is one in that, is that they are still generally playing quite well. They're just not picking up points like they were before. So I suppose from Timmy Simon's point of view, I don't think he'll be massively concerned because the outputs are by and large still there. But yeah, 1 win in 8 is certainly a bit of a concern. Their schedule is quite kind to them at the moment, Westerlo. They've got St Truden coming up next, then a cup game against Molenbeek before playing Dender. Club have, as we know, they're playing Milan at the moment. They then have a very big game at home to Anderlecht before an interesting game in the cup against Belizia Bilsen. So let's see how the game in Milan finishes.
You talk about not killing games. Ronny Deila was sacked for not being able to do that. Do you know what I mean? So it's clearly something within this squad and side that just needs to kind of get that in, that mentality, that kind of killer mentality that they had a couple of years ago, I guess we could say, when some certain big figures were in that team that would kind of drive them on to do that. So, yeah, you mentioned Dender. Let's quickly gloss over their one. Speaking of goalkeepers, Verrips, another great performance from Verrips. He basically earned them a point in this game with his goalkeeping. De Lange kept a clean sheet without really having to do anything. I don't think he even made a save. Or maybe I'm doing him a disservice. No, I don't think he even had to make a save, which is nice for him. Ease himself in. They've obviously signed, I can't remember the goalkeeper's name, very experienced goalkeeper who was with Vitesse last season. Curacao International, if I remember rightly as well. So it's pretty cool. But he'll bring some experience to these, which I think would be nice for De Lange with Varlason out for a couple of weeks. Just, I guess, frustration for Circle, but for Dender, goalkeeper doing well. Can't really complain about that. Not sure if you've got anything else to really add on that one, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to add to this game. It was pretty soporific. That's how I would describe it, really. A game lacking in any real quality. In fact, Miro Muslic afterwards said it was a game with no sparkle. That was his words. Circle, definitely the better side, the one that looked more like winning it, but just, lacking that a little bit of luck ultimately to get it over the line. Lots of duels, as you always get in Belgian football. Lots of fouls, as you always get in Belgian football, but very little quality or sparkle. Vincent Everard afterwards saying that this was not a good game of football. So he completely agreed. He did also go even further than that, and he said, on the evidence of this and the evidence of our season so far, he says, I think everyone would agree, despite the positives, we're not a top 6 side, despite the fact we're sitting in the top 6 at the moment. So he was making sure he grounded his own squad, I think. I think that's what was going on there. But yeah, not too much to say about this game. Hopefully both sides will be able to produce a little bit more quality next week.
Yeah, hopefully Sokol can do that when they face Vikingur Reykjavik, the Icelandic side, in the Conference League. We know what they did last time in the Conference League, so fingers crossed they can repeat that and have another successful one. Union against Ghent, another one of those 0-0s. Goalkeepers played well again. Maurice with 4 saves, but yeah, I think Roof has definitely felt like he was the busier of the two. It's just, Union just still can't score. One kind of thing that I think we should monitor, maybe pick up on, Ait El Hajj can't even get on the pitch at the moment, which is frustrating to see in terms of people that obviously think highly of him, and he's been highly rated and regarded. But I'm wondering if it's time for him maybe in January or at the end of the season to drop into kind of those mid-tier Belgian sides where he's more likely to get a lot more game time, more likely to kind of be allowed to make the mistakes that he does make because the quality will actually shine through there. But that's, I think, one thing to keep an eye on. But again, Davy Roof with another great domestic performance. Hopefully he can actually do it in the Europa League this week because, yeah, he was pretty poor against Chelsea, which was very strange.
Yeah, I mean, just picking up on your Ait El Hajj point, outrageously talented player. I mean, I've always been a fan of him. I thought, if he gets a run and he gets his head down, this is definitely one of those players who can go somewhere. And there was a time where I was convinced that he was going to be one of 2 or 3 players who was probably going to be the next massive thing to leave Belgium for a huge fee, and it hasn't quite gone that way for him. Really interesting to see how he's kind of fallen away there. And I certainly haven't heard any whispers as to why that might be. I know Pocagnoli's been quite open about a degree of rotation and giving that whole squad opportunities just so he can get to know the players a bit more than anything else, as well as being fair. So I do. I mean, obviously there's questions around, is his attitude right? I suppose. I mean, you've got to wonder why he appears to have disappeared from view, because even when he came in the summer, despite the fact that his career was still kind of yet to take off in the way that I was talking about, and that, you know, he has the potential to do, that signing was still seen as a bit of a coup, you know, and they did outlay some money for him because he was on a big deal at Genk as well. So it's an interesting one, that, and one definitely to keep an eye on. Pocagnoli mixing it up a little bit, deciding to go with Rodriguez and Boufal, you know, up top. Boufal actually looked quite good at times. I'm not suggesting he could be a saviour in any way, but from a technical point of view, he's a very good footballer, and definitely has some quality. So maybe he's kind of part of the answer. But we know that the offensive side of their game, you know, they've lost some major players. It seems so strange to be talking about this side, a side that for 3 years now has been so good offensively, consistently, not struggling to score goals. In fact, scoring goals for fun the majority of the time, and from all over the pitch. Now they've got this problem where you don't really know where the goals are coming from, and you're not even confident that in an offensive sense there's enough quality there to produce the goods. So yeah, that's the main issue, kind of struggling to find a solution to their offensive issues. They've actually only scored 6 in their last 10. Which by their standards is, I mean, like most sides you would think, okay, that's not great, you know, there's room for improvement there, but by their standards, that's in truth abysmal. It's really poor, and it does underline a real problem there, which they still haven't found a solution to. I mean, we've ruminated on maybe it'll click to, you know, some degree at some point. Well, it feels like, you know, there's one step forward, you know, one good performance one week, and then there's a couple of steps back again. They're just in this kind of limbo. They've got the added issue of, looks like they've lost Alessio Castro Montes for a fair stretch now. I think he's got a muscle tear. Offensively, he's not the solution, but you would rather have him on the park, so that's going to add to the problems as well, particularly considering they don't have a lot of cover in that position too. Wouter Rankin, not massively disappointed. You know, I think he did say afterwards, he said, you know, a point against Union away is always a good point if that's what you get, and I can kind of see where he's coming from, but I think a lot of the time they didn't make the right choices in this game when they got into good positions, wasting opportunities. Not the only side this weekend that were kind of quite wasteful, I thought. And you highlighted Davy Roof. He's one of the big reasons why they came out of the Duden Park with their point in the end. So yeah, I mean, one of those where I think the draw was probably the right result, even if Union were slightly the better side offensively. Ghent have to kind of get back on the bike though, because they've got Molde in Europe this week, then they've got Genk at home, and then they've got a slightly intriguing home cup tie against Union Roquefortoise, which would be an interesting one to watch. You know, potential banana skin if ever there was one. Union, again, equally difficult. They've got a difficult away tie against Midtjylland. Then they've got Cercle and Eupen in the cup, so there's no real let up for them either. They're probably hoping that cup game they could maybe bang in a few goals and get the confidence going. But yeah, I don't know what the solution to this problem is, and I don't think Pocagnoli knows yet either.
I'm enjoying the kind of teams that are popping up in this podcast that we've never mentioned before for these cup matches. Some fantastic names, absolutely fantastic names. Maybe we'll have to do a podcast on random cup teams. Hopefully some of them get a bit further in the tournament actually, so then we could do a little bit more on them. But yeah, it's not like Pocagnoli's not trying, is it? As well, like you can't blame the man for he's mixing it up. He's putting players in different places and all that. Like Boufal starting up front, Fuseni's been there. Like Rodriguez up front. Like he's mixing it up, and they're creating chances. And you're right, the Castro Montes one will be a miss because he is their leading assist maker. And you can't really rely on Guillaume Francois as a right back playing in that position consistently. Like he can slot in every now and then, that's fine. He's experienced enough to kind of do that, but he's not got the quality to kind of continue that kind of thing, even though he has been there for forever, and he still manages to stay there forever, which is nice. But it would probably, I guess, him. I don't know if they'd go for Terho on that side. I love seeing Kasper Terho. I think he's a really exciting player. Obviously, Lapusand's like in no man's land somewhere. Who knows where he is? But he's kind of he feels like a miss, but I don't feel like he's the sort of person that would score. But he's
been said to train with the development squad, so it looks like a decision's been made. You know what I mean? You're done now. You know, it's
which is fair. Like if he doesn't want to play, like don't keep him in the first team. Like that's completely fair, isn't it? But it's a frustrating one because he's really good player. I really rate him within their system as well. I think he's fantastic. So who knows? But lots of Scandinavian trips for the Belgian sides this week, isn't it, in Europe? Which is always quite nice. We like a bit of Scandinavian football, especially as we seem to pinch players from those leagues all the time. So it's nice to see like who might be coming through. Let's go to the Limburg derby. Feisty, wasn't it? This one. This was quite a funny game actually. Lots of fouls, lots of tackles, lots of goals. 5 goals in all. Lakadai Stoikers was always going to score, wasn't he? But yeah, Taniguchi getting sent off. You felt like that should have been the killer. 15 minutes into the game, getting sent off against this Genk side that can score and can waste chances in equal measure, which I'm sure yours would love to tell us all about as well. But Bertocchini, now that yours isn't here to kind of talk about any ill about him, we can wax lyrical about him. So that second header I thought was a ridiculously good goal, really good. Yeah. I think I mentioned it to you today because you showed us there. Obviously, Brahimi's getting a little bit of trouble for what he said about the referees not being very good. And while he may be right, he was definitely deserved to be sent off. And started to notice with him is this is just my projection. Obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of this, but he gives me the vibe of a player that thinks he's better than the rest of his teammates. He plays like he thinks he's the best player on the pitch for that team. And while he may technically be the best player on the team, the way he plays is not that. It's quite starting to become a little bit detrimental, especially when you have the likes of like a Bertocchini who's got very good movement. Like we said that when you were speaking about him playing for RFC Liège, you said one of the big things you found that was positive about him was his movement is really, really good. And he has got really good movement, but Brahimi will not pass him the ball. Like I don't think he's ever passed the man the ball. And you're costing your side chances and goals there. And then the sending off was just ridiculous. It was so stupid. You just kick Krasovsky and then hold your hands up as if didn't mean to do it. It's like you clearly did. It's a frustration that you're having because you're not scoring. You're not the one scoring the goals and stuff like that. So that's one thing to watch. But I think Mazu, in his own mind, is probably like, I need this guy to be on the pitch though because he has got the quality to win us a game. And we've seen players play for St. Truden who like to just shoot from anywhere in Koita, and that seemed to come off. But I don't think Koita ever had that kind of arrogance and confidence in that sense. Like he was always going to shoot, but I wouldn't ever think I don't think Koita ever thought he was better than anyone else on the pitch. So it's an interesting dynamic to watch, but this was very kind of telling of what Mazu's brought into that side, that they went down to 10 men but managed to stay in the game and stick it out. I thought that was really, really positive from them. Genk obviously will be happy to get the win, but I think they'll be a little bit frustrated that they didn't, like club, kind of like kill this game with the chances that they had to do it.
Yeah, and they did have the chances. I mean, the thing about St. Truden that impressed me the most this weekend was, despite that early red, they made a right good go of this game. Normally sides, they make the change, and actually the tactical change that Felice Mazu made was absolutely the one that I would have picked as well. So I think he got that dead right with the substitution. But yeah, I mean, St. Truden made a really good game of this in the end, despite going down to 10 early, and that was the most pleasing thing for me watching this, because it made the game as entertaining as you hoped it would be, despite the fact they were a man down. They kind of kept going, and Felice is quite wily. He knows what he's doing tactically. I think he knew as well. I mean, his sides are always positive, generally, regardless of who they're playing against. That's just our kind of preset mentality for the most part. But when you think about the fact that Genk are so good offensively, really strong there. We know that. That's been the case for a long time. It's been the strongest part of their game for the most part. Felice, I think, has had a look at this and thought, right, this side are good offensively. They're going to leave space. They're going to be vulnerable in transitions sometimes. So if we stick to a positive game and try and squeeze the pace, just work a little bit harder, find the space, be a bit brave with the ball, not drop back, then we will get opportunities. And that's what happened. And that's how they managed to stay in the game and had a number of opportunities on the break themselves because of that. So, he's done his homework, and I think he knew where to find the space and where to potentially try and find a way back into the game. He's quite an underrated tactician, I think. He really does know his stuff. And of course, amusingly, we have coaches involved in this game who've coached both these sides as well, which is a good pub quiz question for you fact fans. They have both led both of these sides at various points, albeit in Felice's case, very, very briefly. But still, interesting bit of trivia there. Yeah, so I was quite impressed with St Truden on the whole. Bertuccini, we just have to sing his praises. I've always been a fan. I just felt that, there was going to be a time where someone was going to unleash him, make him feel good about himself, and he was going to start to do some stuff. And he's kind of doing that now. He's got 6 goals, 6 and 9, and he's just sitting behind Big Tolo Rocadari as top scorer at the moment. And you can tell he's feeling good about himself, and he's just got such a great attitude. I mean, both of those goals that he scored this weekend were purely through his tenaciousness and his will to get there first, effectively, and make something happen. So his appetite and his vision's there, and I think he's enjoying playing under Mazu and being one of the main men, which is what he's kind of used to being, I think. So that's good to see, and hopefully he can continue to score goals, because I think if he does, he's one of those players that probably won't be there for that much longer if he can have it. I mean, if he gets somewhere in the region of 10 to 15 goals, he'll have had an excellent season, and he's well on the way to that at the moment. You mentioned Stoikers scoring against his old side. He made me laugh afterwards because he said post-match, it was nice to play against friends, which was a lovely little dig, I thought. Matt Smets as well, a little bit more pragmatic afterwards. Another ex-Canary now at the Genkies, along with Stoikers, saying that he was a little bit frustrated that the game couldn't have been killed earlier, as you were saying, Ben, because he felt there was opportunities to do that. So I think even he was surprised by just a kind of smart, in a tactical sense, kind of St Truden, handled that approach. And there's a lesson there for a lot of coaches in how to manage going down to 10, because, as I was saying, normally what happens is sides drop back, don't take risks, and a game effectively peters out for them, and the opposite happened here, and you so rarely see that. So if you're listening, Felice, I take my hat off to you. I absolutely do. We need to see more of that. In terms of fixtures coming up, again, both sides have got cup games. Let's highlight them here. Genk have got Beveren coming up in the cup, which will be an interesting fixture, I think. St Truden's cup fixture is away against Liers, which I think is one of the ties of the round. And if you get a chance to watch that one, maybe you can have a look at that one, because that's a potential banana skin for the Canaries, I think, because Liers are having an okay season.
Yeah, they are doing a decent job in that second tier, so that could be quite an interesting one to see. Yeah, it's just so much coming out of this game. Like you talked about Bertuccini, if he could get 15 goals, that'd be fantastic. But I think the way he plays, he does have that kind of possibility, because he's always in the box, and I think that's the thing. Because he's always going to get in the box, he's always going to have the chances to score the goals. And for St Truden, it is just kind of they've been looking. We were worried about who was going to potentially score those goals for them, but now that he's stepping up and doing that, it's quite good. And I think you mentioned about Mazu going down to 10 men. This reminds me of that first season when he was up with Union, wasn't it? They would do that. Like if they went down to 10 men, they never thought that was it. Like time to sit back and try and defend. They thought, no, we could still win this game. We could still get something out of this game. And I feel like he's bringing that mentality rather than the Charleroi period was just a bit odd. It didn't feel like a Felice Mazu side to watch. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't kind of enterprising like he does do with his side. So yeah, it was quite a breath of fresh air, and it was a great fun kind of match to watch with the atmosphere and everything that you get in those derbies. let's go to it'd be Leuven next, won't it? Yeah, let's go to the Denderleaf. Lovely finish from Ondrejka. Once again, he's got a habit of scoring very similar goals, like whipping it into that kind of top bin sort of area. It's just another draw for Leuven, isn't it? They can't win games. Mertens looks like, I didn't see the extent of that one, but muscular injury. That could be a loss. I don't know. I'm unsure because he's not had a massive impact apart from the opening couple of games. He's kind of been quite quiet, but he is their leader, so that could have a slight impact. Maziz was not great. Like, some of the guys you'd expect to be good weren't great. Mitrovic coming on and scoring, that could be a boost for him. It's kind of those wingers again. Mikkel Biron only coming on the 85th minute. Read into that once again. Like, what's the point? Like, there's no time for him to do anything in that time. So I think Oscar Garcia should be under huge pressure, to be honest. I think they've invested, they spend the money there. They have a right to demand better performances and better kind of results. On the outside, a 1-1 draw against Antwerp's not the worst result, given that Antwerp have been very good against those sorts of teams this season. But it's just, the results aren't going very well outside of that, and he's got to do something, because I think you might be in the same boat as me there, Scott. I wasn't really convinced that he was the right man for the job after the back end of last season anyway, to be honest. I thought some of the decision-making was strange. He's got a better squad than they had last year this time around, but it doesn't feel like it's got much better. I mean, they've lost Torsteinsson, but he didn't always play Torsteinsson anyway, and that was another kind of big red flag. Whereas for Antwerp, they'll probably be disappointed they didn't win the game, but yeah.
Yeah, kind of an interesting one on Garcia, because I think there are real question marks now as to whether he's managing that squad properly or well. There's been such a turnaround there in the summer. You know, we've highlighted a few times how they've got themselves into a position now where there's probably enough depth. I won't use the word quality, but enough depth offensively to give themselves a chance in games. But it doesn't feel like that when you watch them at the moment. You know, we've spoken about the Bayern situation, and it just generally feels like they're not making the most of what they have there at the moment, and they definitely have more than they did last year. So the question is, why is that? And that question will always be laid at Oscar Garcia's door, and rightly so. And things, while they've not gone off a cliff, they're kind of, they're edging towards the edge of it in a sense. I remember before the international break saying that I was starting to get quite worried about them getting sucked into something that they probably shouldn't be getting sucked into. It looks like kind of the joy and the positivity has largely left Denderleaf a little bit. I thought they were a bit better this week. They could have. I mean, Oscar Garcia was saying afterwards he felt they should have won the game, and I kind of see why he was thinking like that. But I think ultimately the draw was the right result. No wins in 6 for Leuven now, and the positive, if there is one for them, is that they're still undefeated at home, which is something, I suppose. Jonas de Rock quite keen to highlight afterwards that he felt they performed below their level that they've been playing at recently, talking about losing too many duels, and highlighting the fact that if you lose that many duels, then you create trouble for yourself, you get into transitions. And that's what happened. He felt that Leuven got all their opportunities through mistakes that they shouldn't have been making, and that's been happening to a number of sides recently. And that obviously puts an end to a good run of form that Antwerp were on. They were looking to go 5 straight wins for the first time in a while. So they'll be a bit frustrated for that. I'll continue the dropping the cup theme fixtures in here because there's still some interesting teams to come, folks. So Leuven in a couple of weeks have got Serang. Remember them, everybody. Leuven are at home to Serang, who missed a penalty hilariously this weekend, by the way. Pape Fall at Serang were one of the most embarrassing penalties I've seen in ages. Go and check that out if you get a chance. Antwerp's cup game is at home to Denza. which will be another one worth checking out, another potential banana skin. We've got a lot more to say about Denza in the coming weeks, because again, there was some more big news about them apparently having new owners. We're yet to get the details of that, so we'll come back to you on that one. But yeah, a draw fair result here.
Yeah, definitely. While people try and work out who these new owners are, we know the news appears to be they're coming out of Luxembourg, but that doesn't mean they're from Luxembourg. That could mean anything. You don't know. And as Scott has been saying, and I'm sure if people are following this, they've seen him say this, like, how do we not know who these people are? Like, someone's got to tell us that, like, it's a leak or something, like, purposefully done as well is usually the way, because that at least brings some confidence to the fan base to be like, okay, like we know who these people are going to be, rather than just suddenly it being announced.
The really suspicious thing, and I think suspicious is the right word, certainly I am at the moment, because we know the history Belgian football has with bankruptcies and ownership issues. You've really got to get ahead of this in the narrative. So to not even put something out there to throw people a bone, I think it's a huge mistake. I've actually been trying to do some digging of my own since this news broke, and talking to some of our sources and contacts, some of whom are very senior, well-connected individuals, inside clubs no less, and even some of these individuals don't know who this apparent consortium are. So that added to my suspicion as well. So we're still waiting to find out. The licensing committee meeting has been knocked back 2 weeks, so I think by mid-November we should know a little bit more. But yeah, I think reasons to be highly suspicious about all of that at the moment. To be continued.
Yeah, and for followers of English football, I don't think it's going to be ASAP Rocky Rihanna style takeover that Tranmere are apparently going to have. I don't think there's not going to be Denza Disney Wrexham style documentary, unfortunately, because that would be quite fun. Let's go to the other derby that took place. Stade Liège beat, gotta say, a really poor Charleroi side, which you didn't expect to see in this one. I came into this game thinking, yes, it's in Liège. Yes, like you'd expect 9 times out of 10 during the kind of recent years, you'd expect Standard to be the kind of dominant side in that game. But I thought the way Charleroi have been playing, I thought maybe they'll come into this with a bit between their teeth and really take it to Standard and kind of put a marker down to be like, yeah, we're the best team in the region at this moment in time. But they really didn't do that. They were really poor, really, really uncharacteristically poor. I think Rick DeMille would be pretty frustrated. And for anyone that watched this game, you basically just had to watch the last kind of 5 minutes of each half to see the goals. You didn't have to watch anything else. Some pretty horrendous defending from Charleroi. You always know, I think we've seen it so much more often this season than any other seasons, that managers will make substitutions at half time now. Like, players don't get that. Go out and show me what you can do in the 5 minutes after the kind of half time. They're like, no, they'll make subs, and Charleroi made 2 straight away. It could have been more with Eka missing his penalty as well. So a great win for Lecco. This is the sort of game that he just seems to love, doesn't it? And I think it's the game where if you're a Standard player, fan, manager that's only just kind of moved into the city and stuff, and when that fan base gets really going, you kind of start to really feel the energy and what could be in the potential of this club that it's really struggling at the moment. But they'll be pretty buzzing to have got that win. And Charleroi on the other, I think the fans will be like slightly questioning where the kind of mentality of this side's gone. Like, why were they not up for it like their opponents were?
Yeah, well, I decided coming into this week's episode that, and I've written this down and I flagged this up to both you and Joris beforehand, that I was going to come prepared to rip Charleroi a new one this week and offloading them a little bit. And I'm going to do that now because they're frustrating me a bit. And it just everything that happened this weekend in the big Walloon derby, because there was 2 Walloon derbies this weekend. We had a Walloon derby in the Challenger Pro League, of course, as well, that people might have spotted too. But anyway, the main Walloon derby, Charleroi hugely frustrating me at the moment. I mean, we have the fans misbehaving at one point with flares around this game. The tension kind of rising when it looked like they were going to lose the game as well with their fans. Charleroi haven't won a Walloon derby since December of 2021. And coming into this game, Rick DeMille said in his pre-match press conference, look, this is not a game which requires the players, I don't need to motivate them for a game like this. Well, you would never know, having watched this game. Charleroi essentially created nothing. The entire performance was just a bit meh. You know what I mean? It was really, really flat. No structure to their play, despite the fact they started quite brightly in the first 15 minutes, but poor movement, a real lack of creativity, and you just felt nobody knew really what they were doing, you know. And actually, in terms of losing the game, the most frustrating thing is both the goals they conceded were pretty pathetic, I think. Particularly the first one. I mean, it's a long ball from Apollo. It goes all the way through, and the defence just don't deal with it, and it's poked in by Eckhart Ayenza. I mean, it's schoolboy stuff. That it's proper embarrassing. The second one's not much better. You know, they don't defend the ball initially. The header comes across to the back post, and nobody looked like, you know, they were interested at all. Again, Sunday League stuff, really, really poor. Rick DeMille wasn't nearly as scathing post-match as I thought he probably was. Certainly not in public, actually. He felt they didn't do too much wrong. That was a phrase I saw him using, and that just annoyed me even more because, you know, the truth is they were really, really poor. When you look at where they are now, they're just not good enough. They're not good enough in lots of ways. They're winless in 5 now. The reality is they've had picked up 5 points out of the last 18 during that time as well. And another thing is they're becoming overly reliant on Dan Heymans. We've hinted about this. He's been responsible for 50% of their goals. Something happens there, then the issues they've got, you know, at the moment just become so much worse. They're just, it's just meh. It's uninspiring, and they are fundamentally underperforming. They've scored 13, but their XG for the overall season is actually 18.2. So that's quite a reasonable differential, I think. You know, I mean, XG's we can debate the helpfulness of that as a stat, and it is always quite controversial, but that's a reasonable differential for me, which highlights a problem. And they're only averaging 1.2 goals a game over the course of the season. So the margins for games going between losing and getting a point, never mind winning at the moment, are very, very small. And I think there's quite a lot of things for Rick DeMille to ponder over there, because there is some quality in that side. So there's no real excuses on that front. He can't say my raw materials are pretty poor. You know, he's a fairly wily coach. I think Rick knows what he's doing. You know, he's proven that. But yeah, Charleroi just really, really poor. And, you know, I do want to see better from them. I do. On Standard will just be delighted with the win, because as we know, they're struggling to score goals. To score 2 goals in a game is as good as it gets for them at the moment, particularly when both of these goals were gifts. Winning a regional derby like this will always give you a boost, and they'll take that all day long, even if it was kind of handed to them on a plate. Following the cup theme again, I'm going to drop the fixtures in. You'll like this because, you know, let's mention those sides that never get a mention. So Standard are playing Lyra Liers in the cup, not to be confused with Liers, the Challenger Pro League side. Lyra Liers play much further down in the divisions and are in fact a different side, so don't get them confused. Charleroi are actually away to Patro Eisden, who've been quite decent this season, so that is another potential banana skin in the cup, because they're playing pretty well at the moment.
Yeah, it could be a tough one for Charleroi, especially if they can't score. And I think, do we need to start considering that club kind of like the graveyard of strikers, where strikers go and just seem to disappear into the wilderness of can't ever score? Like, they've been through so many, and Grayson Key's the most recent one that they brought in. He's stuck with him for now. He scored 1, but again, his performances haven't been up to the level that you'd have expected from him during his, they had that brief period with Clermont where he was really, really good. So, I don't know, yeah. They've like you said, they've got the raw materials. It's just that final thing, and if Heymans gets injured, then who knows what's going to happen. One side that, at home especially, are not struggling to score goals, and I saw a couple of people saying maybe this side's a top 4 team. Not sure I'd go that far, but I think home form, they probably could be top 6 if the way they play at home. They're really, really good. That's Mechelen beat Kortrijk. A couple of injury concerns for both sides in this game. Gunnarsson off after 23. Rabti looks like he suffered another pretty bad injury with kind of like punctured lungs and stuff like that, which is a real shame for him because he was starting to play a little bit better as well and starting to impact the game more. Scott's favourite, Leon Lauberbach, with a goal and an assist. Like, Darcy's getting the best out of him. Who knows? Even though Storm, for some reason, doesn't get the assist for the first goal, which I think is very unfair because he's been kind of getting back to a level that we've always known he's had. He's just been injured so much. And he also recently won election to the local council. So he's been a busy man. Very, very, very random news. Rob Scoofs messaged him to tell me he's going to be president. Not sure that's kind of on the cards just yet, but another good win for Mechelen at home, isn't it, Scott? They really are a good side to watch at home. They're exciting to watch, and I think the side looks really nicely balanced. I think that midfield kind of four from Fulan, Scoofs, Mohamed and Fluke is really complementary, isn't it? I think Fluke's found his best position in terms of he can get up and down that wing. Fulan's obviously, we've raved about him so much. The front three, Storm's like really dragging things along. The defence looks pretty decent as well. De Wolf has slotted in quite well as well. Like it's looking quite nice, isn't it? There at the moment, they're scoring goals. It's all rosy. Whereas for Kortrijk, it's just one step forward, two steps back again.
Yeah, I mean, all things considered, from a Mechelen perspective, Besnik Kazi will be delighted at the moment because the injury list at the Achterdijk Kazerne is growing week on week, and that limits his options, Besnik's options, as well. I mean, he said something quite interesting this week before the game. He said he felt he didn't entirely feel confident that the squad were kind of fit enough at the moment to be able to handle the schedule they've got because the games are kind of coming thick and fast. So I thought that was an interesting thing to say. Their form generally has been pretty positive. You know, there's so many positives really for them at the moment, despite the doctors and the physios and the masseuses will be working some overtime at the moment. Yeah, I mean, their fourth home win in a row. You can file this game really under as a straightforward home win. It was really just a matter of time before they wore Kortrijk down. 5 wins and 7 on the whole for them, so they are in a good run of form. You mentioned Dam Foulon, who remains excellent. He's just become such a consistently important player for them. He produces, consistently, which is just, so important. Kortrijk, I think, Freyr Alexanderson afterwards was talking about how he felt they didn't defend well in the counter. He thought they were quite good in the first half, but, key moments in transitions, they made mistakes. Again, another one of those sides that allowed the mistakes in games to ultimately kill them this weekend. But they didn't offer that much, that side. You felt, the home win was always going to come. Certainly I did, watching it. And this now gives, the medical team at Mechelen a chance to try and work their magic on that growing injury list. Big shout out to Rob Scoffs this week, 287th appearance for Malinois, which now means he's the 6th all-time top appearance, most caps for Mechelen, which is a hell of an achievement. And considering how important he is to the club, you would imagine he's going to better that with a good number of appearances yet to come. So a kind of fabulous achievement to him. Kieran Marabti picking up horrible injury there as well in the tackle with Gunnarsson. Gunnarsson looked like he might have broken his shin, actually, but this evening Kortrijk confirming that he hasn't. So he may not be out for as long as it looked like he was going to. Be interesting to see if he's back this weekend, but I would imagine poor Kieran probably will miss this weekend to allow him to get some breath back into his lungs, because that was a painful one. I think Gunnarsson had a hemorrhage apparently as well as a result of that challenge. So both of those two coming off rather poorly from that. Upcoming cup fixtures here. Mechelen are at home to Raal, who are doing very well in the Challenger Pro League at the moment. That's quite an interesting tie as well. That one could go either way quite easily, I think. Kortrijk are at home to Lokeren, which is an opportunity for them to get a rare win at the moment, seen as Lokeren can barely buy a win in any competition.
Yeah, they are really struggling, aren't they, in the Challenger? And Before we go, because we are actually stretched for time, unfortunately, this week, but do you want to just quickly run through the results from the Challenger so people are up to date? Obviously, we spoke a little bit about Denza. We will, once we find out as well, we will go more into the details of their ownership situation. But yeah, why don't you give us a quick rundown, Scott, of what happened in the old CPL?
Yeah, so this weekend we reached match day 8. Frank Moran lost 2-1 at home to RFC Liège, which was the other Walloon derby this weekend, of course. Ral continue their good form. They beat Beveren 2-0. Club next with Hugo Sike scoring. And without Kay Furo, who got promoted to the senior side, he was on the bench for the senior team this weekend. Club next beating Liège 3-1. Denza, under new owners who are invisible still, beat Young Genk 1-0. Lommel and Eupen finished 1 each. Anderlecht Futures beat Molenbeek in probably the big surprise of the weekend, because Molenbeek are on a good run of form at the moment. Patra Eisden lost to Zulta 1-0, and Lokeren lost again to Serang, who, as I mentioned earlier, missed a hilarious penalty. So Zulta are top. They are the form side. They're undefeated in 8 now, with 6 wins in their last 7. So after that slightly sticky start, they're really starting to motor now.
Definitely, yeah, and you feel like you could just be between them and RWDM near the end, because you expect La Louvre to Ral to kind of slip away a little bit, and Denza, we don't know what's going to happen with them. Patro, there actually are issues there that we don't mention as often, because we could mention it every single week about their financial thing, and that Locker and Serang result could be quite big, couldn't it, as well? Like that's a big win for Serang. They've been rubbish, to be honest, since they've been relegated. They've been really they've been rubbish for 3 seasons now, and they just got lucky last year sticking it out. So they are, they'd be very surprised if they remain in the league. And it seems a bit mean to say, and we are an impartial podcast, but I'd rather a side like Lokeren were able to stay in the league, because there's some history there, that kind of some unfortunate history, and there is something in that. But they are, they're definitely struggling in that second tier as well. But yeah, looking forward to all those cup matches in a couple of weeks. Can't wait to see teams that we don't really see. Hopefully we'll have a couple of cup upsets. It's always nice to get some of those in early doors as well. Scott, as always, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, all things Belgian football.
It has. Never miss an opportunity to do that, and hopefully our Joris will have escaped this technical limbo which has whisked him away from our company this week, to join us again soon. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll be back with you soon for more quality coverage of Belgian football.
Absolutely, we absolutely will. Unfortunately, it seems like, Joris may be in and out over the next couple of weeks, which is a real shame. But we'll get him back, that's for sure. I'm sure everyone will miss him, and hopefully, when he does come back, technical issues will no longer plague him, which will be nice. But as always, if you like what we do, leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. You can buy us a coffee if you really like what we do at buymeacoffee.com. And just follow on our socials. You can find where you need to do that. But as always, thank you so much for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.